Hola amigos de Wine News TV, les invito a conectar conmigo y con mis invitados en Wine News TV On The Go, un podcast que a su vez es un espacio donde aprenderás sobre el mágico mundo del vino a través de invitados de todas partes del mundo que nos contarán sobre sus proyectos para obsequiarnos de forma embotellada música, fuego y leones, como decía el gran maestro argentino Jorge Luis Borges en su poema Soneto al Vino. Hola amigos de Wine News TV, el podcast. Qué placer para mí estar en un lugar mágico, la cava de la familia Chimino en Plaza Cellars, aquí en Cataño, Puerto Rico, y vamos a tener una conversación extensa, educativa y divertida con el señor Joseph Carr, el creador, el hombre, el visionario detrás de la marca Josh. Esta va a ser una entrevista en inglés, pero ustedes saben que yo hago mi entrevista mi introducción, mejor dicho, siempre en español, y vamos a hablar un poquito de esta historia y vamos a probar 3 vinos, un blanco y 2 tintos. Now we're going to switch it over to English. Mr. Carr, Joseph, Josh. Are you Josh? Are you the Josh behind the name of the wines?
That was my father's nickname. His name was Joseph Carr as well.
Joseph Carr.
But his friends called him Josh.
Nice.
And it's kind of become my nickname.
Right.
Here and there. Everybody at the supermarket calls me Josh.
So one thing that I have to say from the get-go, Plaza Cellars has done an incredible job with the marketing and the positioning of these wines. They're ubiquitous. Ubiquitous, that's a word, right? Ubiquitous. People know that my mother tongue is Spanish. I try to do my best in English. I think I do well. So they're everywhere. People love Josh. They love the brand. They love the style. They're approachable. They're easy to drink, fruity, elegant, and I think they pair very well with food. So in terms of, public awareness, I think you already have that in spades here in Puerto Rico. But maybe, and I am one of those, a lot of people don't know the story about the brand. If you can touch on that, please, the story behind the label.
Yeah, well, I didn't grow up. My family didn't own a vineyard or a winery or anything like that. I'm originally from upstate New York in the mountains near the Adirondacks, and my father was a lumberjack, and my mom was a librarian. So wine wasn't part of our culture at all. It was beer and whiskey, things like that. It was a small blue-collar town that I grew up in. But when I went to college also in upstate New York near the Finger Lakes, where there's quite a few wineries in Hammondsport and on Cayuga Lake and things like that. And when I went to school...
Did you go to Syracuse by any chance?
No, I went to Geneseo State.
My father-in-law went to Syracuse.
Yeah,
he's coming with me to the Finger Lakes.
That's a great school. I wanted to go there.
Yeah.
Because I was a wrestler in high school.
Oh, you were?
I got recruited to go to Syracuse and a bunch of big schools. But I founded Geneseo outside of Rochester, New York. And when I got there, I realized I needed to get a job to pay for school. My parents didn't. I have a twin sister, and we were the first in our family to go to college. So I thought I'd get a job. And, I had been a truck driver, and I worked in a lumber mill, and I worked in the woods, and I cut roses. I worked in greenhouses, and it was very much a blue-collar background. But when I got to Geneseo, there was this French restaurant called the Big Tree Inn.
Before that, no exposure to wine at home?
No.
Okay.
None. No. The closest we got to wine was called Budweiser. That was my dad. That's my dad's favorite.
So
did
you discover this restaurant? How old were you? 20, 19?
No, I was 18.
Okay.
I was 18. The drinking age was 18.
Yeah.
So I walk into the restaurant and I look around and there are guys wearing tuxedos.
Oh, wow.
And people are drinking wine by candlelight. And I had never seen anything like this before. So I went back to my dorm and I got a haircut, because I had really long hair, and I cut my hair and I walked back in and I said, "Hi, my name's Joseph Carr. I've worked at all the best French restaurants in my hometown."
Oh, really?
Which there were none.
Of course.
And they kind of looked at me and they made me a busboy. They gave me a chance. And after about 2 weeks, they said, "Joe, you're the worst busboy we've ever hired." because I didn't know what I was doing.
Of course, yeah.
But but I was a hard worker. I showed up on time. I had this blue collar work ethic.
And you had enthusiasm.
Yeah, and so the owner says, "Okay, I'm going to give you a chance. Here's a tie bow tie. Here's an empty bottle of wine with a corkscrew, and here's a book called The Signet Guide to Wine. You go home, you read the book, you learn how to tie the bow tie. You come back on Monday, and I'll give you a job." And he walked away. So I went back to my dorm. I knew how to tie the bow tie because I went to Methodist Sunday school.
Okay.
I could figure out how to open the bottle of wine, and I started reading the book. And the book took me to Bordeaux. It took me to Burgundy. It took me to Tuscany, to Piemonte, to Napa Valley. And
It made you travel through the pages.
yeah, and it was a window for a kid from a lumber mill town. This was really foreign to me, and I just fell in love with it. So I came back to the restaurant on Monday, and Fred's looking at me going, "What are you doing here?" Because he didn't think I was going to come back.
Right.
And I said, "Well, I tied the bow tie, and I know how to open the bottle of wine." He said, "Did you read the book?" I said, "Yeah, I read the book." He goes, "You read that book?" I said, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Okay, tell me 3 crus of Beaujolais." Wow. I'm like, what a trick question, because there's 9. I go, Fleury, Morgon, and Moulin. He's like, "Oh boy, I guess I got to give you a job."
Wow.
And he made me a wine steward.
Oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. That's beautiful. So you really devoured that book.
I did. I read it twice.
A passionate commitment to doing this. Do you recall what they were drinking at that restaurant? This is the wine geeking me. So this is what, the 70s?
This is 1978. So everything.
What were they drinking at that
Everything
restaurant?
was French. Everything
French.
was French. It was
Okay.
Bordeaux and Burgundy. He had a really good Burgundy selection. And what was nice about him is he and his wife would have dinner every night, and he would open up a bottle of wine. He would always share it with me.
That's the
I've
beauty
always-
of wine, that a bottle is well, now I wouldn't say that a bottle is too much for one single person, but it can be. The cool thing about wine is that you open a bottle, you share it with friends, and it's a great connector.
Right.
You may have nothing in common with a person in terms of religion, politics, moral views, but then if the Pinot or the Cab is good,
It's a good bridge.
there's a bond there, right?
Yeah. So I worked as a wine steward for 4 years, and then I applied for a job at a hotel and took the sommelier exams and became a certified somm when I was 23. I worked for Hyatt Regency Hotels in Florida. And then I was a somm. We call it somm. All the kids today call it somm. Nobody says sommelier.
Yeah.
But I worked for the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach and worked Boca Raton Hotel and Country Club. Then I wound up back in New York where I won the Wine Spectator Award of Excellence for my wine list design.
Oh, great.
So I did that until I was 30 years old, and then I got hired by a wine company out of Chicago that imported wine from Italy, of all places. And the next thing I know, I'm on a plane to Piemonte to meet Pio Cesare and represent Pio Cesare's wines and Pio Boffo, actually. And I work with Santa Margherita.
I'm friends with, may he rest in peace, his daughter, Federica.
Oh, really?
I've interviewed her a couple of times.
Yeah. I work with Renato Ratti, Frescobaldi.
Yeah.
And then that company also represented Markham and Freemark Abbey. Freemark Abbey, I became very, very good friends with Ted Edwards, who was USA Today named him one of the top 100 winemakers in the country.
Beautiful wines, Freemark Abbey.
So then I spent the next 10 years working for wineries all over the world. And I got married. And I remember a few years after I got married, I was sitting down at sofa with my wife, and I go, I can't believe it. I've been to all those places I read about in the book.
Yeah, wow.
It all came back to that.
Yeah.
So one day I got a really big job, a big executive job, working for an Australian wine company called Mildara Blass, which represented Wolf Blass Winery in Black Opal. And I wound up...
Wolf Blass, big, huge brand,
Big brand, big brand in Canada and in Australia. And I wound up becoming president of the company when I was 39 years old. I was the youngest and only American to...
Were you residing in the States, or you had to...
No, I was in the States. I handled all of North America.
Okay.
which was their largest export
Oh, okay.
division.
So you didn't have to move to Oz.
No, I commuted.
Okay.
I commuted to Australia every other month,
Right.
which
So,
was really tough.
so you have a couple of million miles
Yeah, I did.
in your
And
wings.
you know, Australian wine. I mean, I was such a Francophile when I first got the job. I didn't know anything about Australian wines because it just wasn't coming on board. I mean, I knew Penfolds and
Yeah.
a couple of those, Grange Hermitage, but I didn't know too much about it. But I really embraced the culture. The culture was great, and you know, I liked working for them. And I had this great job, and I was traveling all around the world, sitting in the front of the plane, had a nice car, a nice expense account, and I was miserable. I was miserable. I didn't see my family.
Yeah.
I
of
missed my
course.
wife. I missed my daughter's prom and cross country running and all these things. And I'm coming back from Australia one day, and I'm like, something's wrong here. My priorities are screwed up.
How old were you when you had this realization?
I was 41.
Okay.
41 years old. All right. And I got home. I was living in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. My wife was staying at our other home in upstate New York. And it was a Tuesday. And she called me and she said, "You need to turn on the TV right now." And I said, "Well, I'm going to Boston. I'm going to a meeting." She said, "You got to turn on the TV." So I turned on the television, and the plane had just hit the first tower.
Oh God, yeah.
And then 20 minutes later, the plane hit the second tower.
Of course.
My wife's friend was on the first plane.
Oh my God.
I had 4 friends in the tower. I had 20 employees in New York City that I couldn't find for 2 days.
Oh God, Josh. This
So
is terrible.
the world changed.
Yeah, the world totally changed.
And my life changed. And I had this crazy idea, but
So pardon the interruption. So you had that sensation that you were miserable, that you needed to make a change in your route before this.
right.
So when this happened, which was a terrible moment for humanity, it served you perhaps to really make the decision in a way.
It did.
Okay.
I realized time is short.
Of course.
You don't know what's going to happen.
And that becomes so evident when you lose people that are close to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tell people when I speak at Harvard Business School and Wharton and places like that, I tell them I didn't have 2 things. I didn't have courage and conviction.
Wow.
And the day after 9/11, I found it.
Wow. Powerful words.
So my wife and I sat down on a sofa and drank a bottle of wine. We talked about this thing.
She's a wine lover herself?
She was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about the American dream. And I saved up a little bit of money, and we decided as a family that we would do this. So the next week I quit my job. I sat up for a week writing a business plan and started a small wine negociant company in Napa Valley.
Mm-hmm. So you moved to the West Coast?
No, I didn't move.
Okay.
Because Dee had a job and we needed the income.
Of course.
So she was working at a university, and I flew out to Napa Valley. I ran into Ted Edwards.
Where you had plenty of context
Right.
from your, yeah, so everybody knew you in Napa.
They knew me. So
Okay.
I went up to Ted Edwards, the winemaker of Free Mark Abbey. I said, "Ted, I want to make Cabernet Sauvignon in Napa Valley."
Did you make the decision to do this? Obviously, you said the American dream and you're an American, but you had traveled all over the world. Did at any point cross your mind to perhaps, do wine in France, Spain, Italy, or you knew it was going to be the US?
Yeah, I always wanted to make wine in France.
Okay.
I wanted to be a French negociant.
Okay. So you would say that that's like Burgundy, Bordeaux, your
Yeah.
favorite regions? Okay.
Right.
Good. All right.
So
Going back to the story, sorry. Free Mark Abbey.
So I'm at Free
person.
Mark Abbey. So the concept of the negociant, back in the 90s, or actually 2000, thank you. In 2000, there were a lot of American negociants. Patson Hall, Marc Aubert. There were only a few of them that were negociants, and the consumers and distributors didn't really think too much of it.
Could you take a minute to explain to our audience what a negociant is?
So a negociant is a very old business model that's developed in Burgundy, France. And essentially is a person or a company that does not own grapes or vineyards or perhaps even a winery. They go around to different growers and buy their grapes, bring in a winemaking team, And many of them produce their wines in a cooperative place or an existing winery. A lot of wineries, for example, Freemark Abbey, where I made my wines, we used their winemaker, and they gave us a space in the back to use, and that helped them with their operations.
Got it.
And then they would charge us a fee.
Very
So the
easily
négociant,
explained. Yeah.
you know, in Burgundy, Joseph Drouin, Louis Latour, in the Rhone Valley, Michel Chapoutier. I knew all about the history of those companies. So I just said, I can do this. I just need to meet growers, get a really good winemaker, have a vision of what my wines, what their architecture should be like.
This is 01, 02, 03, those first couple of years after
First
9/11.
vintage was 2002.
Okay, so this is right after 9/11.
Yeah, right after 9/11.
Okay.
So we started producing wine, and I only made 1,000 cases. We refinanced our home to make the first vintage.
God, talk about a bed.
Yeah. Failure was not an option.
Well, and man, you have not failed. Josh has done very well. We're gonna taste these wines. A lot of people know these brands. I don't think I've seen these labels before. They were like the Josh wines I had in the past. They didn't have that label. They had like a white, and then the Josh was written.
That's because these are the reserve wines that have just come out in the last couple of years.
Okay. Well, then this is going to be a first for me. I had when you turn the bottles now, I figured, no, I have not had these ones. I've had the other Josh wines, and I've had the Carr wines as well.
So Carr is the first brand that I made, and I made Cabernet Sauvignon. I only made one wine, and that was all I could afford. And
who was your provider of grapes?
We bought a lot of grapes from Freemark Abbey at the time, Carpi Ranch, and Bouchon Vineyard. And then we got some grapes from Quintessa.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really kind of interesting because back then...
Was that owned by the Chilean family back then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So back then you could go and you could meet people and say, listen, this is what I want to do. And there was always excess. Everyone had excess grapes. And they would put them on the bulk market, and they'd have to keep them unnameable. But I could get a direct line. I had a broker who would introduce me to Quintessa and these other places, and I could negotiate to get grapes. And that's how I did it. But they all made me sign a non-disclosure.
No,
I couldn't tell anybody where it came from.
For those listening, and I did not know this, so Quintessa and Freemark are two of the most iconic, best wine producing, wineries, houses in Napa Valley. Amazing wines.
Yeah. So that's how I did it. And then I made my first vintage, and nobody bought it. And my wife and I are like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Nobody's bought my wines yet because I was new. And then one day I had this conversation with a guy on the phone, and he had tasted my wine. He goes, your wine's very different. It tastes more like Bordeaux. I go, yeah, well, I'm blending Cabernet Sauvignon with Merlot and Cabernet Franc. He goes, why are you doing that? I said, well, I was a sommelier in a French restaurant. I admired those wines. So I wanted to make more of a European taste profile, but I wanted the wines to be balanced. And I also wanted the wines to be affordable. I wanted the wines to wind up in restaurants. And that's where we started going. And he really liked what I had to say, and he really liked the wines. And at the end of the conversation, I said, well, I'm sorry, who am I talking to? He goes, well, my name's Eric Asimov. And I had thought about it for a second. I hung up the phone. I'm like, I was just talking to the New York Times, the New York Times
wine guy.
And the next month, he wrote an article about new producers. And he goes, there's a producer you need to watch. And his name's Joseph Carr.
Amazing. This is
and the next thing you know,
Eric is, wow, I've been fortunate to exchange messages with him through Instagram. What a gifted writer he is.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, his father is...
The Poor is his section, right? The Poor.
Yeah, The Poor. His father is Isaac Asimov, the science fiction writer.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. So that started things going. So now all of a sudden we're starting to build traction and everything's going great. We're in the Times, we're in all these restaurants.
With just that single Cabernet
just that single one.
Carr. Okay.
Until my wife came to the boardroom one day, which was our dining room table, and announced that she wanted us to make Chardonnay because she liked Chardonnay.
Okay.
And I said, well, honey, I'm a red wine producer.
Right.
And she
Yeah,
said,
but the wife in my house has a big influence.
well, and she said, honey, I'm president of the company.
I love this. Yeah.
So I went out and made some Chardonnay in a very Burgundian style, and that got a really high rating. In fact, it got a higher rating than any of the red wines that I'd been making. So I got the I told you so for a number of years. So then I started making
the Chard grapes, Free Mark Abbey grapes.
Boy, the first one was actually from Mark Aubert's vineyard.
Aubert Chardonnays, typically 97, 98 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this was again a long, long time ago, and Mark just had something. He said, "Here, don't tell anybody," and I said, "I won't." And
you had access to premier grapes.
Yeah.
Premier grapes.
Oh yeah, I got a lot from Andy Beckstoffer.
Oh God, yeah.
Who was
these are big leagues. Now you got to tell me how you were able to produce this wines and keep the cost so reasonably.
Well, that's the value of the negotiation.
Because Joseph Carr, I'm interrupting so much, but I've had more Carr wines than Josh wines. I've had more of the Joseph Carr that has a CAR, and the R has like a long R.
Yeah.
I've had those wines more than I've had Josh, and I remember those were a little pricier than Josh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So I remember having those, but still, for the quality of what was inside, they were very reasonably priced.
Yes.
Very reasonable price.
But think
like what David Ramey does. Like he keeps his wines $50-$60 a bottle, and they're delicious. Nowadays, you see wines that are $500 a bottle.
Well, think about it. I'm producing a Napa Valley wine. I don't own a vineyard. I don't own a winery.
Little overhead.
I don't own a warehouse.
Yeah.
I don't have a sales force. I use brokers and outside agents
who
are on commission only.
And at the end of the day, the consumer is who gets all the benefit.
Right. That's the value. I'm speaking at Harvard Business School one day, and the kids got it. They're like, "You're a virtual company. Yeah. You're bringing all this stuff together. You're a producer. You're getting a really good winemaker and some great grapes from people that."
Who was the winemaker?
Well, Ted was the original winemaker.
Ted
Edwards. And then I worked with Tom Larson at Larson Vineyards in Sonoma. And then I worked with Aaron Pott, who was very famous.
I know Aaron, yeah.
And he's a great guy. And now Wayne Donaldson and Sean Hilfiger are the principal winemakers of all the products that we make. So it's great, anyways, so what happened was the price of grapes doubled.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest distributors went bankrupt. And I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. And I was working with Tom Larson at the time, and I went out and said, Tom, Napa Valley's going crazy, and I got one guy that owes me a lot of money. What am I going to do? He goes, well, you got to make wine outside of Napa. You got to look outside of Napa. Look at the North Coast. Or look at Mendocino, or look at even the California Appalachian.
Other AVAs that are not as blue chip as expensive.
Right. We know growers that are making great wines in those appellations and growing good grapes. You can make a good wine, and it doesn't have to be Napa. He said,
this is 2009, 2010?
That was 27.
Okay.
2007.
2007, okay.
So he said, go home and get some money. I was like,
that's always the solution. Find more money.
I was like, Tom, that's such a great idea. Just go home and get some money. So I went home and I went upstairs to my desk and I grabbed this envelope and it said Joseph Carr, 401k.
Another bet?
$70,542.
Wow.
And I brought it down to the dining room table and I said, honey, I'm going to make another wine, so I'm going to make it. And she looked at me like I'd just walked off the reservation.
Oh,
I was like,
Lord, yeah.
You're crazy. But I said, we have to.
But the thing that you had done, was it that you mortgaged, you took a refinancing on the home?
Yeah.
That already had proven to be successful, right?
Yes.
So this was a safer bet of sorts, because you already had a name and everything. Okay, I'm interrupting too much. You came down, you told your wife, she thought you were nuts.
She thought I was nuts. All my friends thought I was nuts too. Everybody thought I was crazy. But I believed in it. So I went and did it, and it took a year. And here's where Josh comes in.
Yeah. Tell me.
So we got the wine done. Tom and I, we did the wine, and we're sitting in his kitchen. We're laughing. We're telling stories about our fathers. Both of our dads had passed away about 10 years prior. So we're drinking wine. We're laughing. We're crying. We're telling jokes. And we tasted the wine, and I said, this is good. Like, this is a good Cabernet Sauvignon. Now I have to come up with an idea because I didn't have a label. I didn't have a label. I didn't have a marketing concept. I didn't have a sales plan. I didn't have anything. Because I wanted to see if the wine was going to be good enough to market. If it wasn't, I was just going to sell it off.
Of course.
So I went home and I'm talking to my mom about it in this meeting, and we're walking around and I have my camera and I'm taking pictures of all these like signs. I was in Colonial Williamsburg at the time, and they had all these really cool, 17th century signs. My mom's like, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I created this wine and I need a label and I can't come up with a name. So I'm trying to steal a concept." She called me a name. I won't tell you what she called me.
Yeah.
She goes, "Well, why don't you name it after your dad?" I said, "Well, Dad."
Your dad had passed by then?
Yeah, he had passed by then.
Yeah, you were sharing stories
Right.
with your friend. Yeah,
Right.
sorry. Yeah, you
So,
mentioned it.
So I said, "Well, what are you talking about, Mom? Dad's name was Joe, like mine." She said, "No, your dad's name was Josh." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, your dad's name was Josh." And I'm looking at my sister going, "What is this old lady talking about?
Yeah.
Who's Josh?"
She's changing reality for us. Yeah.
And Lisa goes, "Yeah, I know about it." I'm like, "Who knows about what? What are you talking about?"
You had never heard anybody calling your father, Joseph Carr Sr., Josh?
Never.
Wow.
Never. And my mom said, "Hang on, just wait a minute. Your father had a life before kids."
Of course.
He used to be a race car driver, and he used to race stock cars in Vermont and hang out with all these guys that were hellraisers.
Yeah.
And they all called him Josh.
Fantastic story.
I'm like, I've never heard this before. Like, nobody ever told me this.
And it's a kick-ass name, pardon the French, because it's like such a cool nickname, like Jack.
Right.
Josh is like, has flair and has risk. And, Josh.
So I said to my mom, I go, "Mom, I never heard anyone in our house call my father Josh." She goes, "That's right, because anybody that called your father Josh wasn't allowed in our house."
Because it was a previous life of maybe too much partying and excess.
Exactly.
I love this.
So they couldn't come in.
So those who call him Josh were trouble.
They were troublemakers. Yeah.
I love this.
And my dad was a troublemaker.
Oh,
and
God.
That label is based on my mom's handwriting.
I'm sure the answer is yes, but some of those friends of your father from his previous life were still alive, and they had Josh. And later on, they confirmed to you that they in fact call him Josh.
Yeah, they had crazy names like that. One guy's name was Flip.
Yeah.
The other
of
guy's
course,
name
of
was Peaches. And
nicknames like the Outsiders, where they all had like little nicknames.
So my mom wrote his name down on a piece of paper, and my mom had practiced calligraphy.
It's a beautiful J.
That's her. That's based on her writing, and I made 1,000 cases of wine. And I sold it out of the back of my truck. And I got to travel around and talk about my dad and this wine that I thought was a great value. And people really appreciated it.
And it's a way for you to connect with him, even if he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous. That's fantastic.
And the wines are beautiful. They're much more California style in that they're fruit forward.
Mm-hmm, of course.
They're not aged in oak for 24 months or anything like that, because then they need a lot of cellar time. And I wanted wines that consumers could pick up, have today. I wanted to make a wine under $20 that was a good value, that tasted, much more expensive. And that was the secret behind it. So we went out and that's what we did. And just to give you an idea, the first vintage was really small. The second vintage was a little bit bigger.
What did you make for that first vintage? A white and a red?
No, I just made red. All I had money was for Cabernet.
Right, for the Josh Cabernet, which was that white label with the Josh in black.
Right, that's our base label is the white label. So we made 1,000 cases. Jump forward to today.
How many are you making now?
Over 7 million.
It's amazing. And I was I was commenting this prior to the interview, but over the past 3, 4 years, because I am the sort of guy, such a wine geek, that whenever I see a bottle like on the screen in a series, in a movie, I'm curious as to what they're drinking. But sometimes it's like hidden or to the side, or you have the back label, and I'm just curious. I want to know what the director, or if anybody was paying attention, what are they serving? Like, what is Nicole Kidman drinking in that scene, or what Tom Cruise is drinking in that scene? And I remember my wife and I, we are very close. We're like best of friends. We've been together 20 years. She studied gastronomy. She has her own wine page called Wine Wife TV. Well, she does cooking. She loves to cook. And I remember watching something, well, I don't remember what it was, Netflix or HBO Max, and we were watching a series. And again, like for the fifth time in a period of 3, 4 months, I saw a bottle of Josh. I don't remember which actor, megastar, Oscar winner actor was pouring Josh, but like they weren't saying anything about the wine. It was the wine for the scene. They were
Right.
talking. And I told my wife, I remember the line, boy, what an amazing marketing job these people are doing. The only wine I see is Josh. And typically the Josh with a white label, with
Yeah.
and that's, but it was consecutive. It was
Yeah.
like in a period of 6 months. I don't know if this was something that was done by the marketing department with a large studio or what have you. But I told my wife I had never seen that with any other wine brand in the world. And it was
Yeah.
consecutive.
That was Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, was it Yellowstone?
It's in Yellowstone.
Yeah, but it was in Yellowstone. But there are more. I think I have a picture that I sent Nelson when I saw that, and I think I told him, Josh is everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's been in other spots aside from Yellowstone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We have a public relations arm that does product placement.
It's fantastic. So now let's get into the tasting part, because I have a second interview with you, and I have about 25 minutes with you. All right. So we have 3 wines. We have, and this is going to be a first for me, Josh Reserve, which is a Chardonnay. It's a Chardonnay. Yep. And then we're going to do a Paso Robles Cabernet Sauvignon, and then we're doing North Coast Cabernet Sauvignon. So let's get into the first one right here.
Cheers.
I already had a sniff, and I love what you said, about making wines in the Burgundian style, where you get that lovely lemon oil. I don't get any of that buttery, oaky that you sometimes get from California Chardonnay. I do see that Burgundian influence. There's minerality to it. And then, again, the lemon oil thing that you get a lot from, the white Burgundy. This is present. Let's give it a little whirl. Oh, it's very nice. Lovely acidity.
Yeah, really nice.
Key to white wines, and balance. There's balance between fruit, the acidity, the alcohol is super well integrated. I cannot believe this is under $25.
Yeah, well, I was part of the winemaking team when we were doing the base wines, and then I always aspired to make reserve wines, but I didn't have the knowledge to do it. And Wayne Donaldson came along, and Wayne had worked at Newton Vineyards. He was beautiful. An Australian guy. And at first we kind of, I don't want to say we batted heads, but we were kind of looking at things differently. And then one day, Wayne and I got together, and we just realized that this was more important than both of us. And
Newton was famous for its Chardonnays.
Right.
Super famous.
So he took ownership, and he realized that Josh could be this, but it could also have a reserve tier that was appellation named. So Sonoma Coast, Paso, and North Coast.
And the others are what? California.
California, right.
Yeah. This is delicious at this price point. I think this is a wine that will resonate super well with those of you out there who like the higher end Sonoma, the Russian River Shards, and I'm just going to name this because it's part of the Plaza Cellars family. I love David Ramey's Chardonnays.
Sure.
But they're 55, 60, 65. this is up to par with that in terms of quality. It's
Oh, thank you. Wayne will like to hear that.
It's fantastic. It's delicious. It's versatile. It's super gastronomic. It has a nice finish to it, and then again the crispy acidity paired with the generous fruit, because you can only get this type of sunshine for Chardonnay in California. You don't get that in Burgundy.
Right. Napa's too hot, I think, for Chardonnay. They do make some good Napa Valley Chardonnays, but I think Caneros and Sonoma Coast are the two areas that can capture that more of a Burgundian style. You say the word balance, and I really appreciate you saying that, because balance is the word that's always echoes when we're talking about our wines, because anyone can make a big red wine that's big
pornographic. I call them. Say it. This is a program. Pornographic wines.
Right. Anyone can do that.
Lots of makeup wines that are meant to be cut with a knife.
Right. Yeah. We want something that has more balance, more approachability, food friendly wines, and the Josh program has always been about food friendly wines. So thank you for that compliment.
And here in Puerto Rico, we eat a lot of pork for Christmas. I'm going to be publishing this interview probably in the next 3-4 days. And this wine, for you guys out there who want to try pardon my French again, kick-ass Chardonnay. My audience is in the 30-40-year-old people. This is a delicious white wine out of California. This is the Josh Reserve Chardonnay, and it's a North Coast appellation. This is a 2021. You can find it in several points of sale, and of course in Boutique du Vin in Avenida Chardon. Fantastic. How many bottles you make of this? Have the number?
I want to say maybe 10,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere
10,000 is
it's
good. All right, delicious wine, super recommended. I have my dear friend and client Aldo Scaroni here with me. He's an Italian sommelier, and he gave it the nod. All right, so the next one would be which one? Paso. All right, let's get into that.
So Paso is south of Napa Valley, in between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and it's a kind of a really interesting place. It's a cowboy town.
Mm-hmm.
It's where Jesse James founded that town. He was a famous outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these really big mountains that separate the east part of the area from the ocean. So the ocean fog comes over the mountains and cools down the vineyards.
Mm-hmm.
The farther east you go, you have more of a flat land, and the grapes from that area tend to be very hot, maybe a little higher in alcohol.
Of course, yeah.
So Wayne brought me down there, and I was like, I don't know, Wayne, is this really the place to make Cabernet Sauvignon? And he goes, yeah, it is, because we'll blend grapes from the mountainsides with the grapes from the flatland.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be able to create a wine that's not too hot, it's not too high in alcohol, and be a little more fruit forward. And we've been doing this for a few years, and these wines are showing fabulous. It's just, again, very balanced. You're looking for that balance. You want that fruit forward.
I am getting a lovely sort of minty eucalyptus, like notes that are spicy notes that are there. Obviously, you have that generous fruit that reminds me a bit of figs. Reminds me a little bit of like
that
pie filling. Yeah. Let me go to the palate. I am amazed at the alcohol content, 13.5, which for Paso is a baby. It's small. Is Paso, you get wines that are 15.5.
Yeah, that was always my worry, but the way Wayne makes these wines, I mean, Wayne's, again, he's a great winemaker, and
it's nice, but again, I'm not a sommelier. It has certain, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, but for Paso Robles Cab, it had certain Pinot-like qualities to it. It's ethereal, it's delicate, it's not sweet at all on the palate. On the nose, you would think, boy, this is going to be like a jammy Zinfandel. And it has that delicious aromatics on the nose, but then it has this drying edge to it on the palate that is not sweet at all. When I first smelled it, I thought it was going to be a little jammy on the
Right.
palate, but it is not. It finished fresh,
Yeah.
and it finished minty, and it finished refreshing. It's a very well made wine. Very well
Thank
made
you.
wine. Is it? It's a blend, right? Or is it 100% cap?
No,
We
there's.
have Petit Syrah here.
I want to say there's 5 or 7% Syrah, depending on the
Syrah, not Petit Syrah. It's cap and Syrah.
Syrah, depending on the vintage.
Maybe that's where I'm getting that pepper, that cracked
Yeah.
pepper kind of thingy.
I think that'd go great with pork.
Yeah,
I
of
would have
course.
that
This
with
would
pork
go great
tomorrow.
with pork. Yeah, I love to pair pork with Chardonnay for I don't know why. It's a white meat, and I
Mhm.
love the fact that pork has a little bit of lots of fat. Here we eat it with the skin, the
Mhm.
chicharrón, and the acidity of the chard is going to cut through that. This is fantastic. I would pair this with the. This is for those out there listening, this is the Josh Reserve Paso Robles Cabernet Sauvignon, under $25. This would go really well with a blue cheese hamburger.
Yes.
I would pair this with a blue cheese. I love blue cheese. I have like a soft spot in my heart for blue cheese. Very nice, very well made wine. I was comparing them one next to the other, and this is a quintessential American wine. This one right here, I can see your Bordeaux inspiration.
Yes.
This is a little bit more close on the nose. I think it's a baby. I think it's going to evolve as time goes by. You have the cassis. You have that glorious like pencil shaving, which is like graphite, some black cherry to it. But then the leafy, minty note. I haven't seen the alcohol here, but I also believe it's very restrained. Let me see. 14.2. Let's go on the palate. And tell me a bit about this.
So
one, the
North Coast is an appellation that embodies grapes that come from Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino, and I might have mentioned Red Hills, which is an appellation which is very high. It's high in altitude, and it has volcanic soil, and it's predominantly organic. We can't call it organic because it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the right perimeter.
Damn
But
lawyers,
Andy-
right? Damn lawyers.
Yeah, Andy Beckstubber owns a lot of vineyards up there, invested a lot of money up there, as do other people. But so the original Josh was a North Coast wine, and then it became so big we couldn't keep that North Coast appellation for the standard. But Wayne really wanted to go back there and explore blending in, and in Napa Valley, you can blend almost 10 to 12% of Napa Valley Cabernet with Red Hills.
Okay.
And they do, because they know how good the grapes are that come out of that particular area. But again, it's a blend, so you're having some Cabernet.
Yeah, there's Merlot here
little
for
bit of
sure.
Merlot
I
as
get
well.
the fattiness of the Merlot, the plumpy.
I used to make Merlot until that stupid movie Sideways came out.
Yeah, I'm not drinking that word Merlot. Yeah, this is nice, Joseph. Josh, I'd love to call you Josh as an homage
That's okay.
to your dad.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a second name, like a previous life? Did you have your own Josh, your own nickname?
They call me Tiger.
Tiger. Oh my God, that's spells trouble too. Very,
I was trouble. I was a trouble
very
child.
nice wine. This wine to me is delicious now. It will evolve. It'll get better. It's delicious now, but it'll get better as time goes by. And for $25, give or take, for this bottle, for those out there listening, you could maybe buy 2 bottles, drink one in the next couple of days, and then the other, save it for a year, 2, 3. It's gonna be delicious. And lovely chat. It's been fantastic.
Thank
We're
you.
gonna do a separate conversation to speak about something else that I will probably publish much later on when they're in the market. This has been fantastic. How do they follow you in social media? Is it Josh Wines, Josh Cellars? Do you know the name?
JoshCellars.com. We're on Instagram.
Instagram. What's the Instagram handle? The name? Is it
Josh Cellars.
Josh. Yes, I follow you. I know that.
And
because-
just to give you an idea, we have a big social media footprint.
yeah, we'll do
and-
something together. I'll probably do a review. I have something called One Wine, 1 Minute. It's hard to do, where I try to tell the story of a wine, taste a wine in 1 minute. I don't describe wines through typical wine parlance. You know, obviously I'm going to mention smells, aromas, feeling in the palate, but I like to speak about wine through emotions.
Yes.
What that wine makes me feel, right? And to me, the sensation that I get is price quality ratio here.
Right.
It's unbelievable the quality that you can get. And at the end of the day, I think, you know, I don't want to call it a transaction, but because it takes all the romance away from wine, but you're paying for a product. People are paying, you know, X amount of money for a product, and they expect to get something in return. And nowadays, at this price point, it's very, very hard, if not nearly impossible, to find this quality. And, you know, it happens to me, and we're going to wrap the interview with this. If you pay, let's say, north $50 for a bottle, in your mind, you tell yourself, even before having the first glass, even before pulling out the cork, oh, this better be good. You know, I paid $50 for this.
Yeah.
It's better be good. If you pay north of 20, but let's say less than 30, your expectation is this wine, well, I shouldn't expect a lot from it, but I want to get something good in return. But these wines at this price point are great.
Well, we always wanted to over-deliver.
Yeah.
But going back to social media for just a second.
Sure.
I did a commercial that kind of outlined my journey. It talked about my father. And it came out a few years ago. It's had 150 million views on YouTube.
Really? Wow. I have to put the link of that commercial here. If you can send it over later on with your team, I'll give you all my contact information. This has been fantastic. Thank you, sir. It's been a treat talking to you, getting to know you in person, and your team, all very professional. Thanks to Plaza Cellars. Thanks to my audience. Now we're going to switch over to Spanish again. Gracias a los que han escuchado hasta aquí. Estos vinos están extraordinarios, una gran relación precio-calidad. Tomamos un blanco y dos tintos. El Chardonnay está maravilloso. Por $25, creo que es el mejor Chardonnay de California que he tomado este año. Y luego tenemos dos vinos tintos distintos en estilo. El de Paso Roble se siente muy afrutado, muy especiado, pero muy elegante en el paladar. Y bueno, el Cabernet Sauvignon de North Coast es un vino con un poquito más de fruta negra, no tanto fruta roja, un poquito más de fruta negra, también delicioso. Y pensar que usted se puede llevar estas 3 botellas por menos de $100 es una ganga. I was just wrapping up saying that it's incredible that they can get these 3 bottles for less than $100. They can buy the package, right? The trio, the trifecta.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Gracias, mi gente, por su atención. Recuerden darnos suscribirse, dejarnos un comentario y compartir este podcast. Recuerden que lo importante del vino no es la meta o el destino, sino el viaje y el recorrido. Thank you, sir. It's been a real honor to meet you. Será hasta la próxima. Hasta luego. Este fue el episodio de hoy. Recuerda dejarnos una reseña para que nos ayudes a crecer, suscribirte y recomendarnos con tus amigos amantes del vino. No importa cuán avanzado estés en el recorrido de enamorarte de aquello que decían sobre el vino. Son uvas transformadas en poesía. Aquí hay espacio para todos. Salud y como siempre, dale share.